A héisiige ari a build an réaltas, ceanar, príomh ceanara, alas commissioner na Gardaí is ina uisle iliog. Taoiseach, members of government, chief of staff, acting Garda commissioner, distinguished guests. Is mór an orgam tréslú liets étsan agus a glín a hag servéisir san na siacána in anim dérin haar seas go blian. Agus auch go háirithe iad a bhór bás nó a gortíag I man a cuid obair san na héirin agus jenim covrón linne an winter. It is a great honour to have the opportunity of marking the 60th anniversary of Irish peacekeeping, an honour to honour those who have served peace in the name of Ireland, to honour their families, and in a special way, the families of those who have died who were seriously injured in the service of peace in the name of Ireland and for the United Nations. For over 60 years, United Nations peacekeeping has served as the standard bearer of the world's shared commitment to international peace and security. Ireland has a long and well-respected history of participating in peacekeeping missions, both military and civilian, and today overseas service is an integral part of life in the Defence Forces and the Garda Síochána. For over 60 years, not a day has passed when an Irish soldier was not on peacekeeping duty somewhere in the world. And as peacekeepers, our Irish troops were not at war on behalf of Ireland, but were operating and seeking to secure peace, building peace in places where war was relentlessly occurring or recurring. Irish Defence Forces personnel, as you have heard, served in peace support missions all over the world, in the continents of Europe, Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and South America, completing over 66,700 tours of duty. And our participation in United Nations and United Nations mandated peacekeeping missions is a tangible demonstration of Ireland and the people of Ireland's commitment to the pursuit of international peace. Since June 1958, members of the Defence Forces have manned observation posts, stood guard, or patrolled a zone of separation somewhere within the world's most volatile places. That is a unique record, and one of which the Defence Forces and the people of Ireland can be justifiably very proud. There are today 645 brave Defence Forces men and women serving overseas in 13 different missions in 13 countries, and one sea endeavour. For these Irish men and women's service with the United Nations is rightly regarded as both noble and important. The effectiveness of the United Nations depends on its reputation as a force for peace, for good in the world. Ireland's participation in United Nations and UN-mandated missions illustrates the very positive, practical and humanitarian difference that small countries like Ireland continue to make in the world's conflict zones. It was in 1958, just 3 short years after Ireland gained membership of the United Nations organizations, that 50 Irish officers were deployed to the United Nations Observer Group in Lebanon. And how pleased it is to have Colonel Ryan with us, as one of them, with us today. They were tasked with ensuring that there was no illegal infiltration of personnel or supply of arms or other life-threatening material being brought across the border between Lebanon and Syria. Is privled mordom se hen vemar uchtran, kan court in a forcition. I've been very privileged as president, and in my constitutional role as Supreme Commander, to visit our peacekeepers deployed to the Lebanon as part of the United Nations Interim Force in the Lebanon, UNIFIL. And while I was there, I witnessed at first hand, and indeed with great pride, mortas mo, the dedication and professionalism of our military personnel in the Irish Defence Forces. Maruk Trana Herin, I very much welcome this opportunity then to acknowledge the professionalism, the bravery, the commitment to peace and humanitarianism that lies at the core of the Defence Forces' engagement as peacekeepers. Ersan Winterneherin, on behalf of the Irish people, Gam Guipas Logiliog, I wish to thank each and every one of those men and women for the part they have played and continue to play through their service all over the world in continuing the proud tradition of Irish peacekeeping. That tradition is an essential component of Ireland's foreign policy, driven as it is by the very values and principles that have guided the actions of our state on the international stage ever since independence. A commitment to multilateralism, to the values of peace, freedom, international security, and global justice. And may I also take this opportunity to acknowledge again, as I have before, the vital role played by the families of those members of the Defence Forces and An Garda Síochána, without whose support, encouragement and loyalty it would not be possible for their family members to serve overseas. I know that I speak for all Irish citizens when I say how deeply we appreciate the generous sacrifice you make to ensure that Ireland remains a leading contributor to international peacekeeping operations, enabling Ireland to fulfil with honour and pride the obligations we have undertaken through our membership of the United Nations. Ireland's peacekeeping reputation has always been strongly predicated on our neutrality. As members of the United Nations, we are committed to maintaining international peace and security. And in honouring that commitment, our position as an independent and neutral state has been greatly valuable. It has established our acceptability again and again as peacemakers and peace defenders, and has thus enabled us to play an effective role in the international community. For the past 15 years, Ireland's commitment to international crisis management has also involved the deployment of Irish civilian experts and members of An Garda Síochána to EU missions in Africa, the Middle East, the Western Balkans, and the Caucasus. We can be very proud of those working in conflict prevention and in the most important task of post-conflict reconstruction, working as they have been to rebuild civic institutions, to restore public confidence in policing and the rule of law. Ireland's approach has been an integrated one to peace, humanitarian assistance and development, helping to prevent conflict and address fragility, while also recognising the distinct and principled nature of our humanitarian action. A key facet of the approach to international peace support operations is the engagement of Irish personnel at all levels with the local communities, making a great bond between Irish communities and the people of the conflict-torn places in which our soldiers serve. That liaison with the local population and the provision of support and humanitarian assistance is one of the hallmarks of Ireland's approach to involvement in peace support operations. And increased funding provided by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade for local projects administered by Irish peacekeepers strengthens the bonds of friendship and enables an excellent relationship to be forged between Irish personnel and the local community, which is just invaluable in the execution of their peacekeeping duties. As a small country, then, Ireland's proud tradition of participation in peacekeeping and crisis management operations, it adds weight to our voice and influence in international institutions such as the United Nations and the European Union, and helps Ireland to promote its values of justice and tolerance. The significant role played by women in peacekeeping missions, in conflict prevention, conflict resolution, and peace building is so worthy of note. Since 1982, many of our most talented women have joined their male colleagues in serving in the Defence Forces overseas. Over 300 women have served overseas since 1982, and currently there are 29 women serving overseas. The promotion of a strong gender perspective is a key element in all peacekeeping operations, and it must continue to be a priority to increase female participation in peacekeeping contingents. The presence of women contributes greatly to the full delivery of a capacity for the resolving of conflict and in connecting with local populations. The contribution and presence of women in our peacekeeping forces has broadened the skill sets available within a peacekeeping mission, and importantly, has provided role models for women both at home and abroad. And there can be no doubt that integrating gender perspectives and empowering women are integral to improving the effectiveness of United Nations peacekeeping operations everywhere. When I addressed the United Nations at the high-level meeting on peace building and sustaining peace in April in New York, I referred members to the remarkable work of United Nations peacekeepers. I suggested that it is when the United Nations and the member states are working coherently and together across the pillars of peace and security, human rights and development, that real, sustained and measurable progress is possible in the achievement of the principles of the United Nations Charter. Sufficient and effective investment in building peace not only saves lives, it opens up all the possibilities and opportunities for development and human flourishing that peace brings. Na féidirachtaí go léire tá an is a talkie ar faldas na daoine gutse. This is all the more necessary if we are to accomplish the goals by those most remarkable representations of our shared global solidarity, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement on responding to climate change. It is worth recalling again the words of the founding Charter of the United Nations. We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind. Through these words, all members assumed a most profound political and moral responsibility, not only on behalf of their own citizens, the citizens of their own nations, but to the peoples of other nations and generations yet to come. It was clear from my meetings with the United Nations Secretary General and other heads of state that there is enormous respect for Irish communities and the Irish people's understanding of the complexities of conflict situations beyond our shores and the importance of peace. Among those we may thank for this circumstance, rank highly the thousands of members of the Defence Forces who on their return from service overseas have been keen and willing to share their experiences with families and friends and communities, thus adding to the awareness of Irish communities of areas and peoples torn by conflict. And it has built an appreciation, particularly through our young people, their parents and schools, of the delicate tapestry that has to be woven in the building and sustaining of peace on our fragile planet. As our peacekeeping forces continue to operate in an increasingly complex global environment, I am so confident you will continue to uphold Ireland's international reputation with pride and professionalism. And this anniversary is also a time, as I have said, to remember and honour those who made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. Since Ireland's first deployment, as you have heard, 86 members of the Defence Forces and a member of An Garda Síochána have lost their lives in the service of peace overseas. Behind that stark figure lies, of course, so much lost potential and so many families ruptured and bereaved. So again, Maruk Tarana herein, may I say, now, and I think also how all of our thoughts and prayers must be with those peacekeepers and their families today. The decision of any government to send its troops overseas on UN peace support operations is never taken lightly, and the safety of our servicemen and women who undertake this important task must always be a primary concern. Let me conclude by acknowledging once again on this 60 years of peacekeeping in the name of Ireland and the United Nations the contributions of all former and current members of the Defence Forces and An Garda Síochána and civilian personnel and their families who have served in peacekeeping roles overseas. Your generous and courageous contribution to the maintenance of peace has impacted profoundly and positively on the lives of so many in so many countries around the world. It is a legacy of which you and all of us can be very proud. And I know that all of you will want me to wish, as I conclude, a very special thank you once again to the highly talented musicians from the Defence Forces and An Garda Síochána who have welcomed us here today. Tres liam leis na forsa iliag agus a glín, berbánach is gar a míle maithach í go léir.